Hey everyone, and welcome to the CMA EMEA podcast. Let me put off the music here. We don't need that anymore. Welcome everyone to a new episode, and welcome back to those who have been here before. We will today talk about the CSDM, the Common Service Data Model, and with me are my guests, Jamie and Mehmet. Thanks, guys, for joining in. If you would like to introduce yourselves, let's start here to my what is that? The right side hand on my screen
Yeah.
with Jamie.
G'day, I'm Jamie Douglas. I'm a certified master architect. I actually work for myself. I started a company last year called Glide Path Consulting, and I've been working with the platform here in Australia for approximately 14 to 15 years. Started off as a tech, and then moved my way up into the architecture space in the last 4 to 5 years. Yeah.
All right, Mehmet, you've been here. You're a recurring guest, so but there might be people who haven't seen you yet. So
Thank you very much for the opportunity having me here. So I am Mehmet Koban. I am Country Director Switzerland for Agineo. Agineo is a partner in Switzerland, in Germany and Austria. So I'm responsible doing a job in Switzerland. Since 8 years, I'm in ServiceNow ecosystem, and I have done my certified master architect last year with many different colleagues from different countries and different opinions in some way, but we could successfully finish our program. And today, therefore, I'm here to explain about CSDM with different perspectives.
all right, thank you so much, you two, for joining. And I'm your host, Christian. I work for Deloitte. Yeah, I've been doing service now for 14 years, and I'm all snoozled up because it's freaking cold here today. Let's get started with some CSDM related questions. Now, if we want to start with Mehmet, what is the CSDM from your perspective? I mean, we know what it stands for, but what is it really? What does it do?
For me, it is a map to build configuration management database correctly. It defines all basic or standard definitions around how we can build a CMDB, a solid data foundation that we can consume all these data in our different processes, and we can then make standard reporting. So this is my definition.
All right, Jamie, would you elaborate?
Yeah, so I think the CSDM for me is a framework that gives some prescriptive guidance on how you can model your data and really provide that structure um, to your CMDB. I think if I think back probably over 5 years ago when CSDM wasn't really a common topic, I think customers would just do what they wanted with the CMDB, and then when they want to be able to use that data and make decisions on that data, their data wasn't in a good structure, so they were unable to leverage that. So for me, yeah, I really think it's that framework to help guide you with designing that data model.
And what do you guys think is the actual value of having a CSDM inside a platform like ServiceNow?
So from my perspective, it is standardizing the way how we are doing. So let's say if I am implementing ServiceNow, and after a while, and the customer is changing, even me, or I am maybe not available anymore. So the next architect should do in same way, and the customer can have all benefits in a standard way. So we all around the world who are responsible for ServiceNow have a standard definition, and everybody following a framework, a structured way how we are doing, and the customer will then also consume and get all benefits of the framework.
Right. If you think about especially what you just said, that everyone works with the model, with this kind of blueprint in the same way. I think when we consider there are so many different interpretations on the model, which I, by the way, I'm displaying that right now in the stream so that you can see it. It's the CSDM version 4.0. I'm not showing the 5.1. We will show the 5.1 later. I took a screenshot at the last knowledge conference, so we can have a look at that. But if we look into this, there are a lot of definitions here, and there is a lot going on. Do you think that the way that the CSDM is written, Jamie, do you think that the goal that Mehmet just outlined of everyone speaking the same language and bringing things in is actually working in this case?
I think so, to a degree. So it depends on, I would say it depends on the maturity of the customer, how long they've had their instance. I've just done a re-platform for a customer who's been on the ServiceNow platform for over 10 years. And I think they started way before, the common service data model was even a topic. So for them, like they're just so far off the path. It's not funny, but now that they're doing a re-implementation, and then customers that I've seen in the past few years who've done brand new implementations, it is with that standardization. I think yes, you can model these things a different way, so you can use different parts of the CSDM based on your level of maturity or what your needs are, whether you want to focus on managing your services or whether you want to focus on risk management of your infrastructure. But essentially, as questions come up about, oh, we want to be able to, run a report and be able to identify when a certain piece of equipment across the fleet isn't performing well, you know where to look, right? So you go, okay, so it should be using, product models, you should have certain relationships. And so, yes, it's reusable, right? So as long as you're using these out-of-box tables, out-of-box relationships, it is reusable. And from an implementation specialist, a consultant, if I go in blind to a customer and they tell me their challenges, I know where to look straight away because I'm like, oh, you're not using this. And then, oh, how do you achieve that? Well, why are you doing that when you should be doing this, right? And I can, so essentially, it is essentially a blueprint that we can reuse, but essentially, yes, every company does model slightly different because it's quite flexible, right? It is quite flexible in the way that it's designed.
Yeah, and this is something that I have also seen in the past, that the way that certain elements are used, and we will be coming and talking about services in just a bit here, especially on the services side and the service classifications. They are being used slightly different, but in general, there is a relatively generic and reliable way of how data is being structured, and obviously it brings you forward. For me, the CSDM is really the connection between the business processes and the one data model in a predefined way. And the fact that it actually does connect out of the box is what really provides the value. It's not so much the structure. Is it a technical service? Is it a business service so much? I think that at least what I experience is really the fact, oh, it's there and it has these predefined connections. And that is actually what fuels your business process.
Definitely. I think that's right. And it was a conversation I was having today, actually, that with some of the predefined relationships. If you stray and you do something custom, and you don't use those out-of-box relationships, you're not going to get the value that it provides. And I always try to go to, like, think of the high-level reports. If that's all using all these structured relationships, and you do something to the side, then those out-of-box reports and dashboards, they don't know about that you've done off to the side, right? So it's not included in. So if you can keep that structure, you can keep all of your out-of-box capabilities standardized without having to customize them, right? Which is another, I guess, value is low customization, a healthy platform, right?
Yes, exactly. Florian, we will get to your question momentarily. It's a good one. So Mehmet, when you think back, I mean, you have been doing this for a very long time as well. Have you encountered a situation like the one that Jamie just described, where you come into a customer and they have been doing everything, with custom models? I certainly have seen that in the past, where the services were in custom tables, and then everything happens.
Yes, I am doing every day actually common service data model. Fortunately, this is what I'm doing since 4 or 5 years for different customers. So they have a different way of doing. Earlier ServiceNow in implementations, they have not paid so much attention regarding a solid data foundation. This is the first type of customers. So first you need to explain them why you need all of these objects in their environment, in their CMDB, to be able to get more value from their ServiceNow. They are paying really enough money for the ServiceNow, then they need to also get the value for them. Therefore, it is the first point to explain why they need to implement a standard way data model, which is created by ServiceNow, and the ecosystem, whole community and experts are also using this framework. This is the first one. Second one, there are really customizations. So that means in early days, ServiceNow had only one service table, and later they created correctly in really classified way, let's say business service, technical service, and so on. So you need to then migrate in correct way. And then, so the custom solutions, this is the second type of the customer. And third is so-called experts have really made some also wrong decisions at the beginning. And then you need to now bring everything back to the standard. So maybe they are coming from another ITSM or ESM platform or a software, and they know from this software somehow how to create some services. And based on their old experience, they try to bring the experience into the platform. This is the third type of the common customers, what I'm seeing every day.
And talking about bringing this in, be it in a new implementation or in an existing one where it has been, messed up for different reasons, where we don't do finger pointing, we're grown-ups. But Florian has asked a question in chat. Who would be responsible from you guys' perspective, and who would be accountable to push for a CSDM implementation? I mean, us as usually the external people and consultants, we are obviously trying to convince the customers and the different ServiceNow programs that it should be used. But from your perspective, who would be the person driving that? Let's start with Jamie.
Yeah, it's interesting. I could give you the textbook answer, which is a configuration manager, right? But in the real world, it doesn't work like that, because a lot of the customers that I work with, they don't have a configuration management practice, right? So generally, what I actually do a lot of strategy with my customers, and I talk to different areas of the business and formulate all of their problems. And generally, with all the problems that I see, part of maybe like a roadmap, there's always usually a CMDB, because I can kind of tie, their problems into how we can sort of manage that. So in my experience, it's I'll collate that. I might talk to my project sponsor, who isn't configuration manager, who isn't incident manager. They will relay the information to their seniors. But I think a good. I always ask to reach out to an enterprise architect. I'm like, do you have an enterprise architect? And it's like, yeah, we do. I'm like, can I have a chat with them? And then when I start talking to them about the capabilities of the CSDM, that kind of piques their interest, and kind of they start having those conversations around what can make their day better by having this structured single source of truth data for them to be able to do their job. But yeah, it's who should drive it. I guess if you're the platform owner and you can really see the value, you should be having those conversations. And a forum for that is if you've got a governance and you've got a certain layer of governance, talking with whoever's responsible for making decisions and strategic decisions for the platform, discussing with them and showing them the value. Maybe that's where you start, is just with the platform owner.
Mm-hmm. Mehmet, I know we had this conversation off camera as well, and last week we started a little bit. We heard the enterprise architect being mentioned here, and it is hilarious because, as you stated, a lot of companies don't even have that role. So, from your perspective and in your experience with your clients, Mehmet, who's driving it?
Who is driving it, or who should drive it?
Who should? Who should?
Yes, yeah, this is the better question, because yeah, I know who is driving is at the moment mainly we from the ServiceNow community, and from ServiceNow we are actually triggering. But the question if should be, yeah, who should really drive this is the sponsor. So who is really paying for this whole licenses, whole platform? This guy need to really be the owner of the CSDM. If it is an enterprise architect, it's great. If there is no enterprise architect, then the sponsor is maybe the platform owner, or maybe the service owner, or any process owner. So they need to say, okay, I have here my processes, like change process, and I want to know my risks if you are doing some changes, or if you, let's say, is the service owner of the SecOps, and you need to say, okay, I want to know how you are deciding to implement some changes or setting the priority of the security incidents. Some such examples can be given, and based on these examples, I think we can also find who is responsible to initiate a solid CMDB based on CSDM.
Yeah.
I think in my experience as well is I think one of the key success criteria for a successful implementation is having definitely that sponsor and having the executive leadership buy-in. If they understand the value and they see the value, you will get the investment that you need to do what you need to do. Without that executive leadership support, it's dead in the water, right? They're not gonna, if they don't understand the value, they're not gonna invest in it, right? So I think that's really key to remember.
And it comes down, from my experience, to two factors that come in here with the leadership responsibility. And leadership responsibility, I mean, is something that drives the entire ServiceNow implementation, not only the CSDM one, right? If you don't have the sponsor on board, you're basically not getting to a point where you can initiate any organizational change. And we have brought that up. All the governance around it doesn't work properly if the higher up managers, the guys who, like Mehmet said, have the the purse, if they are not invested into the program, even not only from a money perspective, because at the end of the day someone needs to pay it, but they also need to be invested from a content perspective to be able to drive the organizational change, and also at some point, and in some organizations, even the hierarchical actions that come with a program like this, and driving the CSDM. Yeah, that's that. I had a question from Hugo. What value and what first steps do you see for using CSDM outside an IT deployment, like CSM or HR? This is not entirely on point at the moment. However, I wanted to come to this question to not forget about it. And it kind of fits in because a lot of, and that comes, I think I will start with Mehmet here because I think he has some strong views on this as well. The implementation of CSDM does have impact on a lot of areas within ServiceNow, but not everything in the CSDM has and provides an actual value in all of the processes, especially outside of IT.
It depends. It depends how you're using. Let's say, given the example here, CSM from the Google. So how you are prioritizing, let's say, answering a case, how you know which case has the first priority? You got, let's say, 100 of the cases from HR or from your customer. Based on what you are deciding which one is the first one. So the prioritization, this is the main, let's say, the benefit. So the value is the prioritization. So the risk calculation is another point, as I have said. So if you know which your business services, which technical services is important for you and your customers, your internal customers, HR, or your external customers, so then you can decide which case come first. So right. This is the value you get from the only CSDM.
So it is certain objects and certain classes that are defined in the CSDM. Even if you are not an IT person, although the CSDM is very IT focused and very IT heavy, it can provide some value outside of the CSDM. Jamie, you want to chime in on this? You're nodding.
So, yeah, I one of my customers at the moment is, or my main customer is, heavily uses the platform, and they use CSM. So they're a managed service provider, and I can see the value. So the first step for using outside of the IT deployment. Well, let me explain to you how my customer uses it and how they use it, and then I'll go to the first step. So they really use the entitlements from CSM, right? So that's not a CSDM object, the entitlements. However, that uses the products. So the products in the CMDB, and within there they've got services and service models. So those service product models that they leverage, and based on whether you've got an entitlement that's linked to a particular product, that's linked to a particular model, customers have access to things, right? So off the top of my head, an example might be that there's maybe a type of hardware service that they do actually provide hardware services as far as like device as a service. And so if the customer has an entitlement that's linked to the type of service model, which is a device as a service, when their customers log into the portal, they automatically see a certain set of catalog items, right? So they have all these different devices because they're paying for that type of service. They want a device as a service, so they can go in and they can purchase different hardware, PCs, laptops, phones, that kind of thing, right? So whilst it's not using, application services, technical services, they're definitely using that kind of business consume, so the sell consume area of the CSDM, and it's really that's where they start. So that's how they're using it. So if we went to a first step, I would always start with part of the best practice, right? Set your direction, really understand what you need, what problems are you trying to solve, because there's a lot of ways you can use a CSDM. Define what it is that you need to achieve, and then so that would definitely be the first step, rather than just saying, I think we need the CSDM. Say, I need the CSDM because I've got this problem and I need to be able to do these things. That would be a first step. And then designing it, right? From once you know what you need to start designing.
You touched a lot of points here, and I would like Mehmet to chime in here, because again, we've had this kind of conversation before, because what you just mentioned, Jamie, was the sell and consume domain, and that makes sense, right? Absolutely, for this particular or for these particular use cases. Also, if you go for HR, it's probably the same. We're talking sell and consume domain. However, when you talk about the normal, and I wanted to avoid this conversation towards, at least for another 15 minutes or so. But if you go with the normal adoption stages of the CSDM, you would get to the sell and consume and business services pretty much towards the end only, right, Mehmet?
If we check the standard customer service portal, you have their assets, products, and install base items, and so on. So later, if the maturity is going up, some customers have also sold products. If they are implementing everything right, then that means they have also service offering. So if you have a service offering and you have related the service offering with your sold product in a major, so let's say in phase 2 or 3, then you have already consumed the CSDM. We cannot say we have ignored. So, but in the first phase, if you are implementing only a case management, and you get a case, and you have actually your service desk in second or third level, you need to create an incident. The problem is now how we are connecting each item together, because in the case you have normally created a case against a product or against an asset, and then on the incident form you have not even both of them. So both objects are not there out of the box. On incident you have service offering and SCI. So you have immediately a relationship to the IT somehow. So you need to actually implement the CSDM too. But in earlier versions, some, let's say, customers said, okay, this is enough for us. We have the case and we have all the contracts. We know the entitlements, and that's it. But if you are going deep, a little bit, making a deep dive and going through the second, third level, really the resolution of a cases, it is not only creation of the case, but you need to also resolve your cases. Then you need to take care of the other items here in the CSDM.
Right. Okay, cool. I hope that kind of answers your question, Hugo. And we can move on a little. So I'm currently sharing the CSDM here on screen, the Common Service Data Model 4. And as we all know, there is a lot of data types that we need to take care of, a lot of different things in different stages, as ServiceNow basically provides us with a roadmap on how to get there. If you look at the different domains that we are seeing here, and let's ignore the build domain because that is a nightmare in itself, right? Let's focus on the other three for now. What's your experience in filling these things out? Obviously, we all want to get the foundation data properly done. And my experience is that is the first stepping stone that a lot of companies are already struggling with because they don't have their foundation data in order. But let's assume that part is done. And, we get this. What are people usually struggling with and what are they trying to do? Jamie.
I think Tarun, who's put a question in the chat, I think that's a typical struggle, right? Tarun's question there is, I'm new to CSDM and my understanding about CSDM is to place which data in which table. Is that the right understanding? And also, can any of you suggest a document or video which can explain CSDM in simple words? And I really think that is one of the biggest struggles is not understanding, right? Not understanding the CSDM. So I think I've been involved in a fair bit lately of CSDM conversations, and last year I've done some workshops. Now, where I like to start is, and we will get to the struggle because obviously it's all about understanding. Is you've got to set your direction, right? And then this is part of the best practice. Set your direction, then build a team. So you need to build a team and you need to build up their knowledge. If they don't have a shared understanding of this, then you're not going to get traction. You're not going to make progress, right? And typically in a project, you would do a design phase, a build phase, and then deploy and train people. I think that I see that as the wrong way when it comes to CSDM. You need to train people up front, right? So what I like to do is when I run workshops, my first few workshops is not about requirements gathering, it's about education, right? So I'll show this diagram and I'll ask people to raise their hands. Does this frighten you when you look at this? And everybody's like, yep, right? And I'm like, yeah, it frightens me, right, when I first saw it. But I've got one of those minds where if I don't understand something, I want to get in there and work it out. And so what I do is I use some sessions with, give me some, I already know what your direction is. Now, maybe give me an application that you want to model. I will tell you the benefits and we'll do it on screen and we'll model it different ways and have discussions. And I'll explain the different layers, so that design, and we shift it around and discuss the pros of having it designed one way versus another way. And then after 2-hour workshops, I'll say, right, put your hand up if you think you understand this. And they put their hand up because we haven't just gone in there and gone, right, we want your requirements and, we'll train you in 3 months' time when we implement it, right? It's, hey, let's get you understanding. Let's get you play on screen yourself. You can model yourself in PowerPoint and I give them a template and they play. That is like the biggest concern of mine is people are just not educated and they lose interest. They're too scared of it and they shy away. So yeah, I think that is the biggest struggle, right? I've
been there as well. People shy away from the complexity. And I think this is what ServiceNow tries to avoid with the crawl, walk, run approach, introducing, additional steps of complexity and maturity over time by bringing in just some base data. Mehmet, how do you normally overcome this kind of being overwhelmed And we are having this conversation right now with Tarun as well in the chat, right? Yes, it is frightening, Tarun. I agree with you. If you don't know what it is, that's one of the reasons why we are doing this discussion right here, so that you can ask your questions, and we're trying to answer them as good as possible. Mehmet, let's go.
So I'm a realistic guy, and therefore I laughed about Ivan's comment. So this is the most confusing and frightening picture in the history of pictures. I like it. Yes, this is true, because it's a static picture, only a picture. And fit a picture in a real life, you will also not be able to see whole fragments of the movie. Fit one picture, you can also not interpret, let's say, a thing, so a case, and therefore it is so. So if I'm implementing any projects, the thing is, you need to show the value. So the value is not really about only saying, okay, you will have this in the correct table and you got the value. Without really explaining, you will get the better visibility, you will understand your infrastructure, you will understand your infrastructure elements risk if something happening, like let's say CrowdStrike or so, and you can then decide. I even have given some example to my colleagues. If you are in a hospital and something happened in hospital like a CrowdStrike, which server you need to save? You need to first react. So how you decide which task you need to resolve at the in the priority one, and you will not also going to the resolving your, let's say, secretary laptop, because she cannot fill out some reports. Maybe you need to go to the really most critical patient's room. There need to be so the tools there need to work first. Like this, the CSDM, you need to fill the CSDM where you need it and why you need it. And then it will leave for you. It will have like a movie flying before your eyes and your customer eyes. And therefore, I am also not fan of having stages what we have in the CSDM, because there we have not parallelity, not in project management what we are saying, so the red path and so on. So you have some dependencies, and based on dependencies, you can prioritize some part of these objects earlier or later. And so that's in an agile way, you can set a priority maybe a little bit lower or higher. And then, okay, based on my values, my so benefits as a customer, I decide you implement this one. Now, you as an expert, you need to guarantee, based on even the benefits of the customer, how you can implement in a standard way the CSDM. Not because you have learned that you need to do in the stage one all of these objects first, and later you will be do other objects. And so this evaluation need a little bit really experience and customer feeling or customer centricity. Otherwise, I will agree with all of people in community if they are confused with this.
I agree with what you just said, Mehmet, in terms of having the goal in mind. And I think so too, that certain objects and certain types of things are not always needed, and might just add to the complexity, and not provide the understanding. And this is kind of touching what Florian said. Do we need to teach everyone how this thing works and what it does? And I believe that is not the case. As we said before, it is important to have this sort of community or a team that understands how it works and how these things are interlinked. But the normal customer should not need to know how this works. They don't need to understand what's the difference between a business service and a business application, right? They really don't give a rat's thing. But they should be getting out of this what they are trying to achieve with the platform, and that's what Mehmet was, I think, trying to relay here, getting the actual value out of it. And that very much comes down to the implemented business service, to the implemented business process that we are looking into. And some of these require a lot of this foundation data, and some don't. And even if they normally do, they might not in this particular case for customer ABC, because they don't use that part, or they don't use certain master data for their automated assignment or anything else, because they have their own way of doing that. So what you said, Mehmet, understanding how everything is interlinked for us as experts obviously is critical. And then having the vision in mind, what it is that we want to go to. But and here is where we are a little bit, yes, it is important to go to market fast with the thing, to provide value to the customer and champion success, coming back to the methodology. However, it is also important to understand what is the next step after this. And in order to achieve that, there might be, when you are already working on these things, there might already be objects in there that you need in your next steps. And when you are already working on one of the objects, it might be beneficial to utilize this kind of work situation where you have a team set up, you have people working on this, to already take that next step in account, and get this data ready and get it into the platform, even though you don't need it right away. But it is interlinked, and it will help you achieve your second step faster. So having the vision, what we want to go to, is, from my perspective, super important as well, to set this up correctly and get the right answers out of it. But yeah, getting things on the road is super important.
Oh, absolutely, it's important. So if I'm looking to the picture, so in the heart, you see the application service. I think this is the most important one. And right and left, maybe 2 or 3 objects as the first step, first phase of the project we need to implement. And later we check, let's say, blue part or red part is optional. It's also in the framework definition, E1. It's already defined as optional. So that means the business capability or business application and so on. If you have them, it's great. But if you don't have them, at the first step, let's say in the first phase of any processes, what I know, you don't need them. So if you are following enterprise architect view, maybe they have some other value for them. So if your customer is enterprise architect and he is coming to you, then for him, the business application and business capability with all the service portfolio and digital products view is the most critical one. You see the definition in different cases.
Yeah, and we already had that. Jamie, you want to say?
Yeah, I just want to go back to Florian's thing where he's mentioned about the employees of a company who have no idea of the underlying tools. What is their gain in the end? And I guess so. The way that I see that question is, you've got this big IT department, and then you've just got end users. Could be in finance, could be anywhere. Working through their doing their work. The benefits to them of the CSDM is, obviously, a lot of organizations are reactive in their support. Something happens, and then IT responds, right? So you might have an outage and you can't do your work because an application is out. But if you become proactive in the way that you deliver your services, using the services, obviously using other underlying tools like discovery, service mapping, event management, using that with the CSDM, and you can kind of predict that something's going to happen, or you get an alert and the techs are on it before the first person calls, then there's reduced downtime. So obviously more productivity. So the end user gets more productivity. And then that's just in a simple scenario, right? But there's obviously, when it comes to like risk management, let's say you're the manager of a department, and it's your responsibility to do your annual audit of how you're keeping the company secure or whatever, rather than having a form and says, right, are all these devices on the network and who owns this, and you having to do a bit of an audit. It takes you days to do it. If you've got all the data modeled in a certain way, you've got the data to make decisions right away, so you can respond to those requests straight away, right? So and you could probably go on with a lot of different scenarios, but there is a lot of benefit to end users with uptime of services, increased productivity, that kind of thing. So I just wanted to touch on that from what Florian said. And what do you think with that, Christian?
No, that is basically what I mentioned in the beginning, that the business process that we are having, or that we're bringing, the people don't really need to understand how the underlyings work. It's just important for them that whatever we build in the background enhances their user experience and gives the intended value to the business process. That is why we are doing it in the first place, right? And we should keep these things in mind. And that's why I said we might not achieve certain things in the first step, but building this out as far as possible. And this is where it gets a little difficult. And I tried to catch that with my first attempt to work on this question. When you work on the CSDM modeling, and you work on bringing in the defining your services, be it application services, be it technical services, whatever, you're working on that, and you have your stakeholders together, and they are named here funny on the picture. You need to bring these people into a room, or at least to a table, and it might be a virtual table. One of the challenges that I have had in the past, and Mehmet has that as well, is getting them together. And that's why I'm trying to achieve certain things already, even though we don't need them for the business process, and therefore they don't have an immediate value to the end user of the platform. But it is important when you have these people together that they see the entire picture and they understand what it is that they are working on. They need to understand the model, because otherwise they are trying to cram in certain things into objects where they don't belong, and you will never be able to clean that up again. Never.
This is absolutely true.
Yeah.
Jamie, you wanted to say?
Yeah. Sorry, did I cut you off? I thought you were just agreeing. Sorry. Did you want to? Did you have a comment?
No, all good.
Okay.
All,
let's go with Jamie.
Yeah, Jamie. Jamie first.
So what you just said there, Christian, it kind of about using the incorrect object. Kind of it relates to what Kimberly has said there about the challenges of the application services.
Oh my
There's
God,
a lot of
yes.
possible tables. Which table should be used in what scenario? Auto discovery, manual, CMDB groups. What needs to be created as a foundation? How are these used? Relationships in manual implementation. It is more feasible to relate app devices to services. But the documentation suggests these relationships should be applications. How would you handle this? And it's quite ironic that this question comes up, because it was definitely something that was in my head, which is a struggle, right? Is last year a customer wanted to put their full application inventory into ServiceNow so that they could manage the life cycle of a business application, which sits in the design phase, right? So business application, and it's not an operational CI. So you don't actually select that business application to log an incident, right? You don't log it against business application. You might log it against, as Kimberly said here, an application itself. My customer had all of their business applications essentially as applications in a low-level table. and they couldn't do the life cycle and manage. And then, so we worked out a model where we created a business application so a certain audience could do the life cycle and the conceptual design. And then we created an application service, a representation of that business application, and the application stack itself, so either prod, dev, UAT, or whatever. And then it came up, well, you've got applications, you've got 5,000 applications. What do we do with them, right? And so I guess my only real, at the time, I tried to assess like the application table. What's the benefits of just the application table? If we forget everything else, what's the benefits? It's simple, right? It's simple, doesn't really provide a heap of functionality. You can still do approvals off of it. So it was a case of like, you getting a bit more mature now, and now that you've got a different use case of your business applications other than just driving approvals, we need to move those up into that business application and create application services and start doing service mapping and discovery, right? So I just wanted to kind of mention that because that's what looks like Kimberly's struggling with. And I hope that answers her question.
We can agree on having a separate tech session at some point to break these things down, because that is one of the core issues that I see, especially on the application. And I think it is actually worth having a tech session, even though it's not really on a CMA topic. It's more like a tech implementer session, but we can have a tech nerd out about that kind of thing at some point.
I wanted to add maybe one sentence, Christian, for Kimberly. Also, the question of Kimberly is important because, from the version 5, it is now called not application service, it's called application instance and so on. I think it's important to understand that application service up from the application service up, it's everything logical. So if you're going to down, it's everything discoverable. So the application objects are all CI elements, so CI components of the application service. And from these 4 types, at the beginning, if you have not discovery and service mapping and so on, then you can also decide for the calculated one. Why I'm recommending the calculated one? The calculated one will be automatically created for you based on your relationships you have created, even though manually. And then you can also have the discovered one, change to discovered one if you have the discovery and service mapping. You can also use the dynamic CI groups. The dynamic CI groups is also application service.
Yeah. Again, I think we should do a separate session on the managed technical services thing. There is so much misunderstanding, and one of the issues that and this comes down to also what Jamie said, one of the things that I have encountered in the past was very often this misunderstanding of, what's an application service? What's the difference to a business application? Why is there an additional application table? What the hell is an application instance or a software instance? These kind of things come up all the time. We are running dangerously out of time here today. That is insane. And there will be a follow-up session, but we're not quite done yet. Yeah, I get it, Kimberly. Absolutely. These tables are confusing. When you think about your past experience with bringing a CSDM blueprint into your ServiceNow applications, what were actual blockers? What is where you usually run into a wall and you take the sledgehammer and you just can't tear down the wall? What's a classic here that you guys always encounter that you would like the audience to know? That's a wall. Don't run into it. Jamie.
Time. Having the time to do everything that's needed, right? So clean your data, and the customers want to skip that, and we don't have the time to do that, or who's the decision maker? We don't have a configuration management team. Well, appoint somebody who's responsible and accountable, who can get people to do activities. If you don't have that, so that's a huge block, is actually getting buy-in to build that team in the first place, for somebody to make the decisions, and having the time to be able to go and sanitize data, and to actually provide the data that you need to be able to implement. Massive time.
Mehmet?
Agility. So agility is important, because if you have in phases and you can make the definitions which objects will have most benefits for your customers, then you can make decisions how you will be going forward with your implementation. For me, the most important one, the application service, because it is like really a glue between all of them. And then on left and right side, as you see, technical service offerings and business service offerings, these two are also very, very important, because on top of them, you have all of your commitments, SLAs, and so all calculations for your outages and so on. So these three are mandatory, and all of the reference data, if you have them for automation, it's great. If not, then if you have another solution with assignment rules and so on, it's also good. But these three objects need to be implemented in the first place.
Right. So that's about the actual implementation. And I think that is also very critical. Time is super critical. For me, it is, in fact, the right people on board. Because it doesn't help you defining anything really inside the organization if you don't bring in the correct people. I've had implementations of ServiceNow where someone from the how can I say, from the IT department came in, and he was, absolutely enthusiastic, but he couldn't speak for the organization. He didn't have the mandate to actually define these things. And that comes very much down to a governance issue. And defining a service model, like a full-blown service model with all the interdependencies, requires people. And that comes back to a question that we had right at the start. Who should be driving these things, right? That comes back to bringing in the right people. And luckily, the CSDM comes with suggestions on who is responsible for defining these things. We having these roles here on the picture. However, those roles might not exist. And a critical factor for me is to define who should be taking the place of these roles if they don't exist, because otherwise you will not be able to nail things down ultimately, and you will struggle and run and with no results at the end. You will just keep discussing things.
So I think at least in EMEA region or in German-speaking region, we have application owners and service owners. Enterprise architect, if we have, it is good, it's great, it would be really perfect situation. But these two guys, we can reach them to application owners and service owners, and with help of the platform owners, I think we can build the most important, the most critical persona on the table, and discuss about what they need, why they need, and so on, and define also the KPIs to measure later the ongoing project. So maturity, and I think we can find this at the first level.
Yeah, you can bring those roles into the application owner, service owner. Most companies have those, but I think Christian, if you don't have that, if you don't have a core team, it doesn't need to be a full-time role, but somebody who's responsible and accountable. Once us consultants are out of the project, if there's nobody there to manage the health and manage the ongoing, it's just going to fall apart, right? And service owners and app owners can essentially are a part of that team, but they're not the people who drive that the health and the strategy of the CSDM. It needs to be somebody who's accountable.
All right. With that, I'm going to close for today. Thank you guys for being here. It is, as always, a pleasure talking to you. We are out of time, unfortunately, for this episode. There will be another one next week. Maybe if you guys have time, you can come in again and we can keep discussing. Again, common service data model is one topic. I will be having additional topics. Someone mentioned OT management, which is coming up at some point in the future. So I'm very much looking forward to that one too. Keep your eyes peeled. Thanks to my guests for being here. I appreciate it, as always.
Thanks very much.
Enjoy your time, everyone, and happy Friday.
Have a nice weekend. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Bye.
everyone. Bye.
Bye.